Hey everyone, I am Kevin Iole from Yahoo Sports, and during Coronavirus Central here at Yahoo Sports,
Yeah.
we are going to try to talk to as many prominent people in the fight game as we can. And one of my favorite people that I am speaking to, and I am going to say this guy is an undefeated fighter because he lost 4 times when he was fighting at 155. But at 170 pounds, he is a new man. He is undefeated. My good buddy, Mr. Michael Chiesa. Michael, how are you, bud?
It's always good to talk to you, Kevin. And likewise, you were one of my favorite people to speak to. So it's always good to hear from you. And I'm bummed I couldn't make it to that Golden Knights game with you when you asked me if I was in town.
Yeah, just so people know, I'm a Golden Knights season ticket holder, and Mike was in Vegas for a while, and so my wife couldn't go to the game, so I texted him and said, "Hey, you want to come to a hockey game with me?" And I guess you had left the day before or something.
Yeah, I missed it by like a day. I was bummed.
Yeah,
So
well, we'll get you
we'll have
back.
to get.
So
Yeah, for sure.
I got great
Hopefully,
seats. So if you're a hockey fan,
hopefully. Oh yeah, I am. But hopefully you get me back. I mean, who knows how long it's going to be before I can freaking leave my house.
yeah, no, I know, but I'm feeling the same. Like I'm dying. I'm looking at my pictures of golf when I'm playing golf, and I'm going stir crazy. Well, I wanted to ask you, and let's start with what I said kiddingly in the introduction. You're 3-0 as a welterweight, and I mean, my God, not that you weren't a good lightweight fighter, because you were obviously, but the difference between you at 155 and 170 is night and day. So I guess that begs the question that Anthony Johnson has answered a million times: why the hell were you ever at 155 in the first place when you fight this way at 170?
Yeah, it was a tricky situation. Before I got in the UFC, Kevin, I had a full time job, so I just trained on the side. I was never a full time fighter until after I got off the Ultimate Fighter, and then I was actually able to start, having like a weight regimen and stuff. I never really got that big until I started hitting the weights, and I just feel like with my style, you have to be on the weights and on a strength conditioning regimen. It's not like boxing, where boxing it's not as big of a deal where guys are really trying to hit heavy weights and stuff. It's a lot of road work and trying to be light and fast. And I'm not a striker; I'm a grappler, so I got to be
Right.
strong. And it was tough. Is once I started to really discover that this weight cutting thing is getting out of hand, I'm just now cracking the rankings. So it's like, okay, you know how hard it is to get in the top 15. So now that I'm finally getting there, do I just say, hey, Sean, hey, Joe Silva, I need to go up a weight class? There's nothing to really justify it. So I just had to kind of tough it out until it just kind of caught up with me. And it couldn't have came at a better time. You know what I mean? I'm very mature. That this is the right time for me to be fighting at 170 pounds.
When you fought Carlos Condit at UFC 232, I will be honest, I thought, boy, that's a tough fight for you because Condit is such a great fighter and he had been on top for years and just had that mentality. He knew how to get things done. And I didn't give you much hope in that fight. I thought, hey, that was going to be a tough one for you, given Carlos's background and what he had done and your first time at the weight. Did you ever have any trepidation of fighting a fighter, like I know UFC doesn't do this, but they don't let you take a soft step and kind of go in the shallow end of the pool and then move up. They made you go right to the deep end of the pool. Did you ever have any trepidation about accepting that fight?
No, not at all. I mean, I know where I want to be, and I know what it's going to take to get there. You know what I mean? And just because I had a couple hiccups back to back at 155 pounds didn't mean I don't still have the same lofty goals of becoming a world champion. So when they offered me Carlos Condit, I was in the same boat as you. Not that I was doubting myself, but I knew like this is gonna be a really tough fight. And a casual fan and even some people in the UFC might be like, oh, he's spotty. He's been on this skid, but it's like, dude, it's still Carlos Condit. He's still tough as shit. Aside from like the Damian Maia fight, a lot of those losses he was still competing in. So, and for me that was for a lot of reasons, just outside of the fact that it was Carlos Condit and it's a guy that I've looked up to for years.
Right.
I mean, I could go upstairs right now and I could pull out my Carlos Condit Sinister walkout T-shirt I used to wear. Yeah. I've been a fan of him for years. So, but you put that on top of the fact that I lost 2 fights in a row. I'm going into foreign territory. This is a new weight class. There's a lot of different things going on. That was the toughest fight of my life because I had to overcome a lot of things, and I'm very happy things went my way. And I'll tell you a little story about Carlos before we go any further.
Sure.
So right before this coronavirus pandemic really took off here, I got called on short notice to go to Ottawa. This is like right before the lockdown. I got called to go to Ottawa to do a seminar at a college. And this was like something that came up like really short notice, like within a couple days. turns out I have to do the seminar with Carlos Condit. I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? And like after the fight, I tried to go talk to him a little bit, and he was just kind of like, yeah, fuck off, kid. And I don't blame him. You know what I mean? So I get there, and the guy that hosted it was like, hey, you Carlos going to be cool? I'm like, yeah, I'm totally going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. And this is before I got there. And so once I did get there, the guy's like, hey, man, I talked to Carlos, and he actually wants to train. He's got this Submission Underground thing coming up, and he wanted to know if you wanted to train. I'm like, yeah, for sure. So we all hung out that day and got lunch. Everything was great. And I will say this. When him and I got to training, there was some blood. It was fun. It wasn't
just a fun roll or anything, was it?
No, I had a blast. We had a blast. There was no bad blood. There was no animosity. But I mean, it was like an hour straight of like Rocky, like Rocky 3 at the end of the movie,
right?
Like Rocky and Apollo, like the age before beauty thing. It was like one of those things, but we freaking scrapped hard. I mean, just hard grappling for like an hour. And it was a lot of fun. Like I have a lot of respect for the guy, and I would feel the same way whether I won or lost. But I just thought it was just so funny that like I had to go back and do the seminar with him, and we got to just like have this, like, there was nobody around. It was just me and him. You know what I mean? Just behind closed doors. We had a little rematch, a little blood on the shirt, and it was fun, man. I got a lot of respect for the guy. So it was awesome. Kind of cool that I got to have that moment with him. You know what I mean?
What does it mean to you, Mike? In 2 of your last 3 fights, you've beaten guys that held UFC championships, and the middle one, Diego Sanchez, was the original Ultimate Fighter. So obviously you move up to 170, and you're not just beating guys. You're beating some of the best of the best of the best. Does that have a significance to you when you look at it? Like, do the opponents themselves matter when you look back on your record?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, those are the types of guys I want to fight. I want to fight guys that were world champions. I want to fight guys that have been there. I mean, anybody can say what they want, but guys like Carlos Condit, guys like Anthony Pettis, guys like Rafael dos Anjos, they're still very relevant. You know what I mean? And like you look at a guy like RDA, and there's people out there that are like, oh, you beat a guy that's washed up. I'm like, how could you even say that? Look at who he's fought.
Right.
Covington, Usman, Lee. You know what I mean? Leon Edwards, he's fought the best. You know what I mean? So when I'm going against a guy like that, like, it's very important for me to go out and win because, I'm joining a list of guys. You know what I mean? He's not just a gatekeeper. I do think RDA, you give him the right matchups, he's going to win a lot of fights. You know what I mean? And it's just there is a significance to it. It shows that I'm at that level. That's why at this point in my career, at 32 years old, given the last 3 fights I've put under my belt, like I'm looking ahead of me. I'm not fighting anybody below me anymore. Everybody, the Neil Magny thing, that was me. That call out happened while I was in Ottawa. I'm having some beers with my Canadian brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, they got me all pumped up. Like, he called you out. You got to tweet him. I'm like, oh, I'm tweeting him, so I'm just whatever. You know what I mean? But when it gets down to brass tacks, I want to fight guys that are ahead of me. So we'll see what happens. But
Gilbert Burns, we saw something there.
I love that guy. But yeah, him and I, we're on a collision course. It's just inevitable. I mean, styles make fights. You see how the UFC matches fights. I mean, him and I are destined to fight sooner or later. And I'd rather have it be when we're at the top, because this is going to be a tough fight for both of us. It ain't going to be no walk in the park. You know what I mean? And I got a lot of respect for the guy and his skills and his style. And we've been very cordial in passing. We were almost on the same quintet team together. So we've done a lot of communicating, and I got a lot of respect for the guy, but I can see that we're on a collision course, and, I'll let the UFC do their job, but I've expressed my interest in that matchup, and it's just now. Yeah, exactly. Well, he'll fight anybody. The guy, I really think he would have fought Francis Ngannou when Francis needed an opponent. He's a lunatic, and I love it. You know what I mean? But he's a guy I have a lot of respect for, and those are the guys I want to fight. I don't want to fight the guys that are calling me out on Twitter, talking shit, being disrespectful. I'm not into that. You know what I mean? I want to fight guys that are true martial artists, guys that, that aren't about that. I want to fight respectful martial artists, guys like Gilbert Burns, guys like even Neil, you know what I mean? Going back to Neil Magny, he's a guy that's super respectful in his approach to the sport. I'm not out. I tried to get in these verbal pissing matches with guys and didn't go my way. And truth be told, that's just not what I'm into.
And that's not who you are as a person. I mean, no. I know you. Other people don't know you. You're not that kind of guy.
No, and I was doing what I thought was the right thing to do to try to get me the big fights. But, I found my way back home to myself. You know what I mean? And the way to get to the big fights is you just got to win. Winning is everything. Winning is everything in the sport. Winning will get you everything you want. It is the validation of your hard work. Talking shit has nothing to do with it. So I'm not really into the guys that, I'm not going to accept anybody's challenge if they're going to be a dick about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you just go somewhere else. You know what I mean?
I wanted to ask you, Maya has been, so elite in the grappling level, obviously for a long time. And in the UFC, he's had an unbelievable career because of his ability to grapple. And he goes back to back with Ben Askren in a fight that, my lord, you talk about two of the greatest grapplers, and then goes to Burns. Were you surprised by either of those outcomes? Were you surprised by how Maya did against Askren, and then coming back how Burns was able to do against Maya?
Well, I thought Burns was going to win. You know what I mean? I just didn't think it was going to be like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maya, the last time he's taken a hard shot and got knocked out was Nate Marquardt, and that was what, 2007,
Yeah.
2000, no, 2008,
No,
probably
2008 or 9, yeah.
yeah, 2008 or 9. So, that's what surprised me. But I thought Burns was going to win that fight. Damian, he's an elite grappler. He's been he's been the guy holding the torch for all us BJJ and all us grapplers. And for him when he beat Askren, I didn't really know how that fight would go because you got two guys that are in the similar age bracket. I don't think Ben's funky style really benefits him against a guy like Damian. You can't afford to make tactical mistakes. Ben's style, if you ever watch Ben in wrestling, there'd be times where Ben would be down but he'd be down by like 7 points in a match. And you'd turn around and by the end of the third period, it'd be like, 13-10 and he won. You know what I mean? He's just a guy that like he does these scrambles and he puts himself in some very risky situations. And that's Damian Maya is not the guy you really want to do that against. And we saw that. You
Right.
saw the way Ben
He capitalized on.
Yeah, the way he reached back and exposed his neck and Maya only needs that one short arm. And that's all it took. So that one didn't surprise me. The Burns one did. I thought Burns was going to win. I just didn't think it'd be a one-shot KO. But good for him. You passed the torch in a way that we didn't think was going to happen. I thought the torch would be passed because Burns would out-grapple him. But
Right.
he went the opposite direction and hit him with the left hook.
I wonder what you think about that fight in Brasilia. You referenced Maya and Burns. Watching that, was that strange to you, seeing in an empty place with no fans? And I think so much of you guys, what you do is you feed off the crowd and the adrenaline and all that going on. And when there's nobody there, how do you think that impacts guys?
Well, it's a little different for me because I came from the Ultimate Fighter. I came from the 13 weeks of being in the Tough Gym. And granted, I only really had one fight that was really quiet. That was like our fight to get in the house. We didn't have teammates yet. We didn't know who to cheer for. You know what I mean? Right. So, yeah, it was definitely weird, but it's something that I'm a little bit more accustomed to. But, in a big arena, it's kind of a different ballgame. It's one thing to be in a warehouse, that seats 100 people, and it's another thing to be in an empty arena that seats 15,000. So, it's definitely weird. And you can see guys like celebrating. Like usually a good celebration it goes hand in hand with a good crowd. You know what I mean? So, going back to Gilbert when he's like, "Whoa," like freaking out. It's like, dude, that probably echoed and just torched everybody's eardrums in that whole place.
Yeah.
It was just like there's nobody there. But
I thought it was funny when Bisping goes, Gilbert Burns, ladies and gentlemen.
And then they did the UFC did the video where they meshed that together with Mick. Did you see the one where Mick was standing on the side clapping and they meshed the two videos together? I thought that was hilarious. And this might be the norm going forward for a little bit here.
Yeah.
We're going to see what's going to happen with UFC 249, and it's going to be crazy, Kevin, if one of the biggest UFC cards ever is going to be held in an empty arena. What parallel universe are we living in right now? This is so weird.
I can only imagine what that would have been like because, the thing I love, and it's ever since I really started going to fights, the in the arena, you can feel it. There's a sense when there's a big fight, it's just that buzz goes through everybody and you almost get chills going up and down your spine. It's the fighters are making the walk out and everybody's watching that. And there's just such a sense. If you haven't gotten a chance, whether it's boxing or MMA, to go to a live event and sit there for a big fight like Khabib and Tony Wood, my Lord, that is such a great experience. And now when they walk, we're not going to have that, if they walk. Obviously, I would never shortchange Dana White. If he says he's going to do something, I know he usually does it. This is going to be the challenge of his career to get this off. But my Lord, it's disappointing that there won't be people there to cheer that on.
Oh, dude, for sure. I mean, you said it best. I mean, when you're at a big fight, I mean, almost any fight in general, any fight card is going to have at least one matchup that's going to have you on the edge of your seat. You know what I mean? In this event, I mean, you're talking about Weaseling, Francis Ngannou on the card, and all, you know, and all the matches that were there to begin with, Makhachev versus Hernandez, things like that. But yeah, I mean, don't ever doubt Dana White. I mean, people can say what they want about him. They can have their opinions about what he's doing and the safety of the fighters, this and that. I will say this. He makes a very valid point when he says that if anytime there's UFC fighters at an event, the medical staff, we are taken care of. You know what I mean? And this is crazy, Kevin. This is freaking nuts. You want to hear something crazy? I think my fight week, I truly think my corner man, my teammate, my best friend, Sam Cecilia, I think he had coronavirus in Raleigh. I swear to God, I'm not kidding you. So the day that I left for the fight was Sunday, and I woke up and I could feel, you know, I didn't feel right. I like woke up. I'm like, God, you know, I'm leaving today. Something just doesn't feel right. I'm kind of, you know, when you're about to come down with a bad sickness, you just kind of feel off. I'm like, I just don't feel right. And I let the UFC staff know. I'm like, hey, I'm not feeling good. Like, you know, so I got some medicine. I just stayed laid up in my hotel room for a couple of days. I never broke a fever. I never got really sick, but I did not feel right. Took a few days off, felt fine. Sam shows up on Tuesday. We have a couple practices together, and then we go to a dual meet on Friday. Yeah, we go to a dual meet on Friday, the day after weigh-ins. And we go back that night, and Sam's like, dude, I'm f***ed up right now. Like, there is something really wrong with me. So him and Austin Arnett, they go train that night. Sam broke a fever that night, had the bad, like everything that they said that coronavirus is going on in his chest.
So he had the respiratory?
He had the respiratory, he had the fever. Like the day of the fight, he just stayed up in this hotel room by himself, like just staying away from us. And we got to the locker room, he just like sat in the corner. And my mom got really sick too, upper respiratory, the same thing. You know what I mean? And this is like at the time, I mean, this is when.
So do you think you might have gotten it from him and passed it to her?
My mom was sick before she got there, I think. But I think if anything, I gave it to Sam. You know what I mean? And I haven't gotten tested yet. Ever since this whole thing ran wild, I'm like, I'm just gonna stay home. I'm staying home. I'm staying locked down. You know what I mean? I'm gonna play it safe. But I mean, that fight week was like, I mean, we're in Raleigh, and they're like, oh, we had the first confirmed case of coronavirus getting there. So it was already. This is when it's like as before it was gaining traction. Man. But you could ask anybody on my team. Sam was deathly sick out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere. I remember we went to the NC State Wolfpack wrestling meet, go Wolfpack. And I just look over across at him and I can just tell he's just like a total space cadet. Like he's just not even here. And after they trained that night, he broke a fever and it got really ugly. So it's like, it's just weird, man.
Because I saw on Twitter today or yesterday, somebody had said, I wonder if there have been any MMA fighters who have had corona, and nobody responded positively. So Sam might be the guy.
Dude, he really might be. And who
knows? Record that he does not want, I'm sure, but
no. And who knows? I mean, they said that there's people that have gotten the virus and have had nothing happen to them. And I can't say for sure if I had it or not. I just think it's really weird that I didn't feel well for a couple of days. But like I said, I didn't break a fever. I didn't get the respiratory thing. And keep in mind, at the time, I'm in peak physical shape. I mean, I was in the best shape I've ever been in my life. My diet's on point. You know, everything, if I was in any position physically to combat that type of virus, it would have been at that point in time. Right. So it's just weird that I didn't feel very well. And then all of a sudden I feel great. And then a couple of days later, Sam is just like, dude, it was bad. I didn't even know. I was so worried. I didn't even know if he'd make it to my fight. Like he was that sick. I was like, wow, dude, you might just have to stay here and lock yourself up in your hotel room. You know what I mean? It was weird, man.
That is crazy. Wow. Well, we've got some breaking news from Michael Chiesa there. That's an awesome one.
I don't know, man. It's weird. It's super weird.
Let's just, I really appreciate your time. It's been awesome talking to you. Yeah. Just wrap up with a few more things. And I want to get your take since you are so well versed in the grappling end of MMA. Can Tony deal with Khabib's ground game? I mean, Khabib is such a great grappler, and I've heard him compared to like an Olympic wrestler, that type of thing. Obviously, you got to think that if they do end up fighting on a schedule, it's going to get to the ground at some point. Can Tony deal with the grappling advantage that Khabib has?
Okay, here's my opinion on this, Kevin, and this is coming from me being in a position where I thought I was going to fight Khabib someday. So I've thought about this matchup thoroughly. I've thought about me matching up with Khabib, and I've thought about Tony matching up with Khabib a lot.
Sure.
First things first, you said it best. This guy is could be an Olympic level wrestler. I mean, you see the way he fights, you see his roots and where he's from. I mean, all of his countrymen are phenomenal grapplers. The guys that are in combat sports, they're all phenomenal. But when I always looked at myself fighting Khabib, I know how you got to beat the guy. I mean, obviously you got to catch him with a punch. That's anybody's kryptonite is to hit anybody with a punch. That's it. I mean, you can shut that's the lucky shot thing. That's one. But I mean, I think you kind of got to take that off the table. I think with a guy like Khabib, the guy is always so dominant in his grappling, in his wrestling. When is he ever in a bad position? You know what I mean? We've never seen it. You know what I mean? I truly believe
Michael Johnson fight won a little bit in the first round.
Yeah, a little bit. I think when it comes to grappling, if you could get Khabib in a bad position, one back take. I mean, how often do you think that guy gets his back taken?
Probably
never. But I feel like if you did take his back, there's going to be a short time where he's going to freeze up because he's not used to it. You know what I mean? That's just kind of my theory on it. Is if he takes you down, you got to keep yourself moving. You can't let him trap your wrist. You can't let him cross your feet with that figure four that he does. You got to keep it moving. If there's anybody that can keep it moving, it's Tony Ferguson. That guy can. I mean, that guy probably can't even sit still at the dinner table at his house. You know what I mean? He's the guy he's going to keep it moving, and on top of that, he's going to do damage. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to hold somebody down when they're elbowing you from the bottom and hitting you and batting your ears. And, he's going to keep, not only is he going to be moving, but he's going to be doing damage from a lot of positions. We're going to find out if Tony can beat him, if he can take his back or anything even look at Dustin Poirier. If Dustin Poirier would have locked full guard on that guillotine, this might be a totally different conversation we're having because that was a tight guillotine. Had he not went leg over, leg underneath, if he would have went full guard and locked him in and went for it, we might be having a different conversation. So I don't know. I think Tony has a chance against anybody. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean I think he's going to win. I just think he has a chance. You know what I mean? And we'll see. I kind of have a different idea of how this fight pans out. Probably opposite of anything you've ever heard. I don't even want to tell you because Tony Ferguson already has me blocked on all social media. And I feel like if I say this, he's going to come track me down. You know what I mean? The El Kukui thing. So I'll tell you when we get off air, I'll tell you my theory on how I really think this fight's going to
You can tell Michael, trust me, because he's going to tell me something. He doesn't want El Kukui chasing him down, so he knows I'm not going to spill the beans.
No. If we're in a professional setting, like an octagon, 4-ounce gloves, yeah, whatever. But I don't want the guy showing up on my doorstep.
No, he would be a guy I would not want to meet in an alley and have him angry at me.
No. Not at all.
That's crazy. I asked Laura Senko this yesterday. I thought going in the Conor Khabib fight, the one advantage I would have given Conor was hand speed. I thought, Conor is a very quick guy. And I thought in that fight, as I'm watching the fight, Khabib was the quicker fighter, right? And so I almost wonder if Khabib might not fight Tony standing and try to use quickness because of what you said, getting on the ground and getting, Tony with those elbows, and up kicks and things that he does. I almost wonder if Khabib might try to use, his striking and quickness as a way, to kind of counteract all Tony's stuff.
Yep, and that goes hand in hand with what I believe. How I think the fight's going to pan out. It's probably polar opposite of anything anybody's said to you or has said in the media, but I just have this vision in my head, and it revolves a lot around everything you just said with Khabib's hand speed and his quickness. I mean, the he's got fast twitch muscles, man, and it really catches people off guard. I mean, that overhand right was a freaking laser, you know what I mean? And he does a good job getting his head off center. He gets you really thinking it's a shot, you know what I mean? And especially if you're thinking – for Khabib, if you're going same stance, righty against righty, Khabib's always going to shoot on the safe side to the left leg. You know, he's going to shoot head outside for the left leg. There's no strike you can get hit with there. You know what I mean? But that also is tailor made for the overhand right. You dip like you're going to shoot your head to the safe side, head outside the left leg. Yeah, boom. And then you throw the overhand right, you know, so he's good at that. And he even did it against Conor when they're fighting opposite stances. You know what I mean? But when you're going righty against righty, that's going to be a very big weapon for him. And it's going to, I think it's going to come into play this fight.
I will wrap it up with this. Do you think Conor deserves a fight against Khabib? If let's assume that the fight goes off as scheduled and Khabib wins it. Dana has said, you know, he believes, and I think he's right. Although I think I disagree with the numbers a little bit. He thinks it's going to be the biggest pay-per-view fight of all time, Conor Khabib 2, and that would make it 4.6 million. That's what Mayweather Pacquiao did. If that, in fact, if they get it, do you think Conor deserves that fight just as a competitor? I know you have your beef with Conor, but do you feel like he would deserve that given what's going on in his career?
From a professional standpoint, I would never let my own, you know, I'm always going to keep it professional. I'm never going to let my biases come into play, especially with things like this. It's kind of a double-edged sword. If they did the fight, if Tony and Khabib goes off on schedule, I don't think it's going to do the pay-per-view buys that Dana thinks. It'd be the biggest MMA draw we've had, but it would be the biggest pay-per-view of all time. So he's not totally wrong, but if you did Justin Gaethje versus Conor, and of course you have Khabib in attendance, Conor wins. You go back to the old school. Remember when we used to bring Chuck Liddell in the cage after Tito wins?
Right.
And you do that type of thing. You do something like that. Now you have the ability to hype the biggest pay-per-view, because guess what? Habib and Conor did so good because they played off the footage from Brooklyn. You know what I mean? A lot of the fight, right. A lot of the build up for the fight, a lot of the countdown shows, a lot of the stuff, it all was built around that. And you can't really run that back and beat it. It's already kind of beat into the ground. So I think you could make it the biggest pay-per-view of all time if you cashed your chips all in. You go Conor versus Gaethje in a main event, maybe International Fight Week in July. You bank on Conor winning, which that's going to be tough because Justin Gaethje, I mean, that's the dark horse of the division. That's the guy that could really dethrone Khabib, could dethrone Tony if he wins. That is the real dark horse at lightweight. Conor beats Gaethje. You bring Khabib in. You have a little in-octagon altercation to really go old school. Go back to the old way the UFC's type of fights. That's what they used to do. Bring the guy in the octagon. Do that type of stuff. Do that again.
Would you be concerned, though, Michael? Would you be concerned? You're a fighter, and you know what the emotions are like after a fight. Let's say, you know, Conor wins that fight, and Khabib walks in, and we know what happened at the end of UFC 229. Would you be concerned about doing that? Would that be a safety problem? Because there's no way you could have that happen again.
Maybe if you had Tim Kennedy and his boys in the octagon to kind of facilitate it, maybe it could work. I think you could make it work. I think if you prepared for that, I think that would be. Hey, if you really want to make this the biggest pay-per-view of all time, you're going to have to take risks. Now, like I said, you go, you know, Khabib wins against Tony. It's going to be the biggest pay-per-view of all time in the MMA world, if you did the rematch right away after this fight. But I think that if you really gambled, rolled the dice, you do Conor Gaethje, and you staff up and facilitate this type of confrontation, go back to the old school ways, then I think you have something that the media can really build off to give it the potential to truly be the biggest pay-per-view of all time in all combat sports.
That is unbelievable stuff. Well, Michael, this is only part one, because we're gonna do this again soon, because you are awesome at this, and I love talking to you. I appreciate you, and I'm gonna end this interview now so I can find out about Khabib against Tony. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin.